In a silent desert, under a sky that seemed to hold the breath of the world, humanity was about to give birth to its first artificial sun. It was not a light of life, it was a light of death. On the morning of July 16, 1945, at precisely 5:29, the Jornada del Muerto desert of New Mexico was torn asunder by a flash that belonged to no known star. This was the first nuclear detonation in history, the moment a new and terrible fire was stolen from the gods. In that searing, silent instant, the world was changed forever. But to arrive at that deafening roar, at that blinding light which consumed both heaven and earth, required a titanic effort. It demanded a project of such secrecy and scale that it bordered on the unreal. An immense, clandestine army of scientists and soldiers, technicians and laborers, thousands of men and women, all driven by a single terrifying objective: to build the most powerful weapon ever imagined. Thus, the Manhattan Project was born. Its story begins not with ambition, but with fear. The year was 1938. In a laboratory in Berlin, two German chemists, Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann, stumbled upon a disturbing phenomenon: nuclear fission. By splitting the nucleus of a uranium atom, they had unleashed a quantity of energy that defied all previous understanding. It was a scientific discovery of extraordinary significance, but one with the potential for unparalleled devastation. It was the Hungarian physicist Leo Szilard, alongside Albert Einstein, who first grasped the catastrophic implications. If Nazi Germany, now marching across Europe, were to harness this power and forge an atomic bomb, the free world would be brought to its knees. And so, in the late summer of 1939, Einstein affixed his signature to a letter addressed to President Franklin Roosevelt, delivering a stark and urgent warning. It was the beginning of everything. By 1942, as the Second World War raged across multiple fronts, the United States gave the official order. The Manhattan Project was underway. Its name, deceptively mundane, was a simple reference to its original coordination office in New York. But what it would create was anything but ordinary. Command of the entire enterprise fell to General Leslie Groves, a man of brute force and unyielding will, obsessed with absolute secrecy. The scientific leadership, however, was entrusted to a brilliant, tormented, and visionary theoretical physicist, J. Robert Oppenheimer. Groves and Oppenheimer were an improbable yet formidable pairing. One was a creature of the military, the other a luminary of academia. One sought absolute control, the other was consumed by an insatiable thirst for knowledge. Yet both understood, with chilling clarity, that the task before them would irrevocably alter the destiny of humankind. To build the bomb, they needed places that did not exist, sanctuaries of science hidden from prying eyes. And so, entire cities were conjured from dust and shadow. Los Alamos, the scientific heart of the project, was built on a remote mesa in the high desert of New Mexico. At Oak Ridge in Tennessee, a sprawling complex was dedicated to the painstaking enrichment of uranium. And at Hanford, in Washington state, vast reactors churned out the new, man-made element of plutonium. These cities appeared on no maps. No one could enter without clearance. No one could leave without permission. Their inhabitants, toiling day and night, were often unaware of the true nature of their work. They were citizens of a secret nation, assembling, piece by isolated piece, the dawn of a new and terrifying age. To some, it was a whisper of a new energy source, a promise of limitless power drawn from the very fabric of the universe. To others, it was merely a new kind of conventional weapon, larger, but of the same kind that had torn Europe apart. Only a select few, sequestered in the high desert of New Mexico, understood the terrifying truth. Upon a remote mesa at Los Alamos, a city that did not officially exist, one of the greatest concentrations of intellect ever assembled, was brought to bear on a single, terrible problem. Here were names that had redrawn our understanding of reality. Enrico Fermi, the navigator of the atomic nucleus; Niels Bohr, the philosopher king of quantum mechanics; the brilliant and irreverent Richard Feynman; the fiercely determined Edward Teller. These were men who, only a few years prior, had dedicated their lives to deciphering the elegant, cosmic laws of existence. Now, driven by the urgency of a world at war, they sought to bend those laws, to twist them into a weapon of absolute power. To construct an atomic bomb was not merely a challenge of engineering or physics. It was a profound moral crucible. How does one justify the creation of an instrument capable of erasing a city, of turning tens of thousands of lives to shadow and ash in a single, searing instant? For many of these scientists, the initial motivation was a chillingly simple one: fear. The fear that in the laboratories of the Third Reich, Werner Heisenberg and his colleagues were racing toward the same goal. The spectre of a Nazi atomic weapon was a possibility too catastrophic to contemplate. But as the war in Europe turned, and intelligence reports made it clear that Germany's atomic program had faltered, the original justification began to fray. The moral certainty wavered. For some, a deep and troubling doubt began to set in. The project's scientific director, J. Robert Oppenheimer, found himself increasingly tormented by the implications of their work. He understood, with a poet's clarity, that they were forcing open a door that humanity might never manage to close again. But the great and terrible machine, once set in motion, had a momentum all its own. The work bifurcated, focusing on two distinct paths to nuclear fission. The first, a device based on the isotope uranium-235, was conceptually simpler. A gun-type mechanism that would fire one subcritical mass into another. This bomb, nicknamed Little Boy, was reliable in theory, but demanded industrial effort to produce its rare fuel. The second path was more complex, more elegant, and more uncertain. It relied on a different element, plutonium-239, and a radical design based on implosion. A perfectly symmetrical sphere of conventional explosives would crush a plutonium core, compressing it to the point of a nuclear chain reaction. This was the design for the bomb that would be known as Fat Man. It was this more complex implosion device that required a full-scale test. The test was given a code name that was at once poetic and deeply sinister: Trinity. In the desolate expanse of the Jornada del Muerto desert at Alamogordo, a 100-foot steel tower was erected, a strange altar for a new and terrifying god. At its peak, technicians carefully positioned the gadget, a sphere of wires and explosives containing the harnessed power of 20,000 tons of TNT. In the hours leading up to the test, no one knew for certain what would happen. The calculations were all theoretical. Some harbored a primal fear that the chain reaction might not stop, that it could ignite the nitrogen in the atmosphere and set the entire world on fire. Others, more prosaically, feared a dud, that the intricate implosion would fail, scattering deadly plutonium across the desert floor. On the night of the 15th of July, 1945, a profound silence fell over the observation bunkers. It was a silence filled with tension, with scientific curiosity, and with a deep, unspoken dread. Then, at a pinpoint of light appeared, a light that defied all earthly descent sky, brighter than 1,000 suns. The desert mountains, miles away, were illuminated with an unholy brilliance. The heat could be felt on the faces of men 10 miles from the tower. Only then, after the wave of light and heat, did the sound arrive. Not a bang, but a physical roar that echoed from the heavens, an echo from some infernal depth. A colossal, churning mushroom cloud began to ascend, rising miles into the stratosphere, carrying with it a new age, the nuclear age. Watching this terrible and magnificent spectacle, a line from an ancient Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, entered Oppenheimer's mind. He would later recall, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." The test was a resounding, terrifying success. The bomb worked. A new power was born into the world. But with it came an unbearable weight, the weight of choice. The war in Europe had ended. Hitler was dead. Berlin had fallen. But in the Pacific, the Japanese Empire fought on with a fanaticism that stunned the world. American forces were preparing for a full-scale invasion of the Japanese home islands, an operation for which strategists predicted casualties in the millions for both Allied soldiers and Japanese civilians. The Trinity test had not provided an answer. It had merely posed an unbearable question. The power to end the war was now in their hands, but what was the price of using it? The atom had been split, but in that searing flash, it was humanity itself that had been irrevocably divided into the time before and the terrifying, uncertain world that came after. In the summer of 1945, the reins of a world at war passed to a new American president, Harry Truman. It was then he was briefed on the terrible success of a secret endeavor known as the Manhattan Project. In his hands, he now held a decision destined to fracture the conscience of the world. To use a weapon of unprecedented power, the atomic bomb, and force a final brutal end to the conflict. On the 6th of August, under the cover of pre-dawn darkness, a B-29 Superfortress bomber, christened Enola Gay, lifted from the vast runways of Tinian, an American foothold in the Pacific. Secured in its belly was Little Boy, the first operational atomic bomb in human history. Its target was a city that had so far been spared the ravages of conventional bombing, a vibrant hub of life and industry, Hiroshima. At 15 minutes past 8 in the morning, the bomb bay doors opened. Little Boy began its descent. For less than a minute it fell, a silent harbinger of the apocalypse to come. Then, at an altitude of 600 meters above the city's heart, it detonated. In that single blinding instant, a sun was born on Earth. The temperature at the core of the explosion surged past 1 million degrees Celsius. The very air ignited. Buildings were not destroyed, they were vaporized, their constituent atoms torn asunder. Human beings caught in the open simply ceased to exist, their final moments seared onto walls and pavement as permanent ghostly shadows. In a matter of seconds, more than 70,000 people perished. Tens of 10 visible poison of radiation. Hiroshima was no longer a city. It had become a sprawling crater of dust, fire, and unimaginable pain. 3 days passed. From Tokyo, there was only silence. The Japanese War Council, stunned and disbelieving, had not yet capitulated. And so, on the 9th of August, 1945, a second mission was flown. A second bomb, a more powerful plutonium device nicknamed Fat Man, was unleashed upon the city of Nagasaki. Once again, hell opened up from the sky. The roar was devastating, the destruction absolute. More than 40,000 people were killed instantly. Homes, hospitals, schools, the entire fabric of a community was annihilated in a flash of light and a wave of force. On the 15th of August, 1945, Emperor Hirohito did something no emperor had ever done. For the first time in history, his voice, considered by his people to be sacred and divine, was broadcast across the nation. He announced Japan's unconditional surrender. The war was over. The bomb had achieved what no other weapon could. It had bent an implacable enemy to total submission. But the cost was a scar upon the soul of humanity. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the scientific father of the bomb, traveled to the White House to meet with President Truman. He was a changed man, haunted and hollowed by his creation. "Mr. President," he confessed, I feel I have blood on my hands." Truman, irritated by the scientist's moral anguish, reportedly replied, "I don't want to see that man in this office ever again." While the world celebrated the end of a global nightmare, a profound human, moral, and existential tragedy had unfolded, not just in the ruins of Japan, but in the deserts of New Mexico. The scientists of the Manhattan Project, many of whom had pursued their work with patriotic fervor, were now forced to live with a deep and abiding guilt. They had unlocked the power of the stars, only to watch it used to create an inferno on Earth. The Manhattan Project did not truly end the war. It merely ended one chapter and began another, far more terrifying one. The bomb was only the beginning. Within a few short years, the Soviet Union would detonate its own nuclear weapon. The Cold War had begun. An arms race of staggering scale transformed the globe into an invisible minefield, where nations amassed nuclear warheads capable of destroying the planet many times over. A fragile peace was kept under the shadow of mutually assured destruction. Citizens built fallout shelters in their backyards. School children practiced attack drills, hiding under their desks. Humanity learned to live with the constant, low-level terror that a single human error, a political miscalculation, could trigger the final apocalypse. The weapon born to end a war had, in its terrible triumph, given birth to a new and permanent age of fear, an age where humanity's own ingenuity had granted it the power of its own extinction. An age of fear was born, an age of shadow, an age where the fundamental forces of the universe could be held in the palm of a human hand and used to extinguish a city in the blink of an eye. The bomb was not merely a weapon, it was a schism in human history, a new epoch defined by a single terrifying truth. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the man who had orchestrated this terrible symphony of physics, would soon find himself consumed by its political fallout. At the height of the Cold War, he was interrogated by the very American government he had served. In the chilling paranoia of the era, his pacifist leanings, his intellectual associations from the past, and his deeply troubled conscience were reframed as liabilities, as signs of disloyalty. The architect of the atomic age was stripped of his security clearance. The man who had guided the Manhattan Project to its devastating conclusion was publicly humiliated, cast out from the world of power and secrecy he had helped to build. He died in 1967, his legacy forever etched with a profound and terrible awareness. Science untethered from ethics is not progress, but a double-edged sword of immense destructive potential. He was not alone in his torment. Many of the brilliant minds who had worked in the deserts of New Mexico, chasing the secrets of the atom, recoiled in horror at what they had unleashed. A chorus of warning rose from the creators themselves. They joined campaigns against the proliferation of their own invention. They penned desperate letters, signed petitions that carried the weight of their unique knowledge, and spoke publicly with the urgency of men who had stared into the abyss. But it was too late. The nuclear genie had been released from its bottle, and it would never be forced back inside. The bomb had entered the world, and the world would never be the same. The Manhattan Project stands as one of the most staggering scientific achievements in human history, a testament to the limitless power of the human intellect. But it is perhaps also our darkest. It demonstrated with blinding clarity what can happen when that intellect deciphers the most profound secrets of creation and chooses to weaponize them. The energy that binds the nucleus of an atom, an invisible primordial force that holds suns together, was reforged into a weapon capable of annihilating in an instant what nature had taken millennia to build. After the fire fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the world stumbled into a new era. It was an age governed not by diplomacy, but by an equilibrium of terror. Peace was no longer a matter of treaties and alliances, but a fragile standoff, maintained by the mutual fear of total global annihilation. a new doctrine entered the lexicon of power: mutually assured destruction. Its acronym, MAD, was a grimly fitting summary of the logic. In this new reality, no one could truly win a global conflict. And yet, every major power was poised, finger trembling over the button, ready to initiate the end of all things. In the name of security, monstrous arsenals were born. Nuclear submarines, silent hunters, began to glide through the ocean abyss, carrying payloads of unthinkable power. Intercontinental ballistic missiles slept in hardened silos, each one a promise of fire aimed at the heart of a distant enemy. Warheads became smaller, more numerous, more efficient in their capacity for death. Every regional conflict, every border skirmish, every political crisis now carried the potential to escalate into a global finale. A single error in judgment, a misinterpreted signal, a flicker of paranoia in a command center was all it would take to ignite the funeral pyre of civilization. Today, the project that officially ended in 1946 has left a permanent legacy. More than 13,000 nuclear warheads remain in the world's arsenals. They are active and they are ready. Some are in the hands of dictators, others belong to unstable governments. The risk is not a theoretical abstraction from a bygone era. It is a tangible, persistent threat woven into the fabric of our modern world. The fundamental question posed by the flash of light over Trinity remains unanswered. Have we learned anything? Can we build a future where our vast scientific knowledge serves life, not death? Can we look to the heavens without the lingering fear that one day fire will once again fall from that sky? The answer will not be found in laboratories or in political treaties alone. It resides in a more complex and volatile space within us. It is a question of conscience, of the difficult and constant choice of how we wield the incredible knowledge we possess. The bomb changed the nature of war, but its deepest impact was on the nature of being human. From that moment forward, every political decision, every international crisis, every conflict has been shadowed by the long, dark memory of Hiroshima. Humanity had learned to speak the language of the cosmos, but had yet to find the wisdom to control its own voice. It began as a purely scientific endeavor, a race to unravel the fundamental secrets of the cosmos. But we remember it now as a solemn admonition, a crimson warning flare ignited in the heart of human history, a boundary crossed from which there could be no retreat. This is the lesson etched not in stone, but in the profound, in the knowledge of how to build a bomb. It is found in the wisdom to understand why we must not.